We have two guests who are seated in the studio with us today, and we're looking at certain issues around education, of course. And that question comes in: why should you pick tech as the course? It's the one it's the bankable one. It's the one that everybody's saying, like, if you can't go wrong if you do this. And we're going to be asking ourselves the questions why. And to help us through with that conversation this morning, from the Moringa School, we have Clare Korir, who is a director of project, as well as Peter Muturi, who is a senior technical mentor, both from the Moringa School this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am very well. And how are you?
I'm doing great.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you. How are you doing, Peter?
I am well.
All right. Well, welcome to the Situation Room. You're both in the hot seats of the Situation Room. We're dealing with a hot topic, so, that's apt. And so we're starting by, CT Muga will tell you that he goes to a different African country every week. He comes back with a bag full of proverbs. He's going to tell you what country he's in, and he'll share the proverb. And then we're going to ask both of you to tell us what your interpretation of that proverb is. Good?
Good.
All right.
Yes, we are in the Republic of Malawi. We are, the whole of this week, that is where we've gotten our proverbs from. Next week, we'll be concluding our foray into the SADC group of countries. The thing that is apparent and patently obvious about the African continent is just its wealth. Wealth in terms of resources, minerals, human resource. Yet, despite all this wealth, the ordinary citizens of this continent do not benefit from these. That is the tragedy and the sadness. You hear of companies, organizations that come to do business, and they're big, the names are big, and the benefit somehow never trickles down fully, so that even fundamental and basic needs within the country is met. So when you look at African countries, where we specialize in is in the poverty index, where you are referring to an African country in terms of how poor it is compared to other nations of the world. Now, the proverb. Do not be like a mosquito which bites the owner of the house. Do not be like the mosquito which bites the owner of the house.
Let's start with you, Claire.
So I'm just thinking about how I fight with my mosquitoes on a weekly basis. But I think I'll just speak to my personal experience around going to school and my education journey. I went to school in the US, and I remember at that point, everybody was telling me, there's no way you're coming back. You got the opportunity to leave. You went to Colombia. Do not come back. And one of the things that I said to myself and did not disclose to anyone, even my parents, I said, I must come back because I'm not needed in the US. So for my interpretation is that I wanted to be the person who would bring whatever development or be part of the transformation and the journey of the African continent. So I didn't want to be the person who removes blood, if you think about the mosquito, what it does, actually be the person that brings edification and progress to the African continent.
You didn't want to be part of the brain drain.
I did not want to do that. It was the easier thing to do, but I didn't want to do that.
So you chose a path less trodden.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. What about you?
I think I'll move with what Claire is also saying, in the sense that when I think about it, I'll say, how about just being part of the people that do not bring bad cause, but actually being in an advantage point of bringing an advantage point. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. So even with those interpretations, we are taking in that big question this morning, and that's the one where we're asking that why should you choose tech? It seems to be the bankable course that we're asking folks to, get into after high school. And everybody's saying, I don't want to be. And we're getting past that. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor kind of thing. That has been the conversation for the longest time. So the question that we're looking into this morning then is asking ourselves the question. And then, of course, in relation to the things that the Moringa School does, but beyond that and where the world is going today, the question for us today, and we can start off with that, is that, why tech is one of the safest bets today. We'll start with you, Clare.
So I think it's now common knowledge that the job market is shifting, and it's shifting pretty hard. And one of the most versatile careers that you can actually pick at this point is actually tech, because you don't have to, it's not like a niche career, sort of like being a doctor. Mm-hmm. You can actually have and do tech in various different industries, right? You can be able to be a versatile person. And because a lot of people are thinking about how do I cut my costs, how do I increase my margins, people are looking to go the route of automation. People are looking to go the route of protecting their digital assets. So with the shift that is happening, not just in tech as an industry itself, but in the different and in the various industries that exist, for sure, tech is the way to go, because you can be able to actually transcend, right, just the industry itself, as a software engineer, as a cybersecurity engineer, UX, UI designer.
Yeah. See, when you talk about tech as a solution, true, it is a solution. But as someone in this room would say, some of us who are ancient crocodiles, how do we get involved in this tech?
You see, the beauty of tech is that it doesn't, if you think about upskilling as a continuous process of learning that we all have to do regardless of our careers, tech is the most, I would say, ubiquitous and the most accessible, right? You're able to upskill pretty quickly, right? And beyond Moringa,
ubiquitous.
It is let's say it is the most accessible. It is the most accessible of all upskilling areas, right? Partly because you do have so many platforms beyond Moringa, from Udemy to Coursera, and of course you can say Moringa, that you can actually upskill, and it is not constrained within the walls, say, of a university. If you think about all these platforms where you can upskill, so for example, in your ancient role,
crocodiles, yes,
you can be able to.
You must for future reference, you must understand who the ancient crocodile is.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
If you cast your gaze in my direction, yes, you will understand with greater clarity the reptilian nature of certain people in this room. Please go on. Yes.
But I would say, learning, you can learn at any age. As long as you think of yourself as a learner and a student of life, you can always, find yourself in a classroom, to acquire new skills. Yeah.
Okay, so then what are some of the things that we're looking at that folks are tapping into today that essentially makes it relevant? So you say that no matter where you look, then tech definitely is the best bet. What are some of those areas?
I think the biggest thing right now and the biggest buzzword is AI, machine learning, data science. And I think in Moringa, actually, what we can offer is data science. And this is not just from a point of view where you just think about data. You can also think about it from a business point, in the sense that once you do data science, you can think about, how can I actually be able to provide insights to certain businesses? How can I be able to actually say, maybe there's a certain trend that we can set in business. So away from the software engineering bit, you can be able to do machine learning, which is also, I think, a bit of in data science. You can be able to be trained in AI and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. What does AI promise?
Well,
so when we talk about AI, everybody thinks, okay, well, when we combine AI with students, coming out of high school into university, the first thing we think of, okay, well, here's this nifty tool for how I can get my thesis written, or here is a tool for how I can get my assignments done. But it's beyond that. And what are we looking at in terms of how that can be used?
Well, in different industries, you'll actually get different answers. Because, for instance, if you look at the medical industry, you'll see that AI actually assists in identifying certain patterns, maybe if you're checking for cancer cells and things like that. If you look at agriculture, you can be able to predict maybe yields and things like that. If you look at software engineering, especially what most of us are used to, especially in assistance, like something simple as, hey, Google, you can also look at that. So there is a lot of opportunities in AI that transcends just the small bit of prompt engineering. Even in big industries, there is a lot of it. Yeah.
You are the senior technical mentor.
Yes.
Okay, how does AI work?
Well, there's usually a tech joke about AI. Sorry to say it, but there's usually a tech joke about AI being a lot of if statements. Yeah, so where you put like sort of operations, conditions to be met. If this happens, this should be done. But now, in a more technical bit, AI is actually a lot of things. Yeah, if you try to dive deeper into it, you'll see that there is a lot of even mathematical operations working under. But in the most simple way, I can say that it's just having models that allow us to be able to actually have certain expectations met. Because when you look at AI, there's different fields from machine learning and so on and so forth.
That's really broad, because I will then ask you, expectations met. A young person wants to get married. I'm going by what you've said.
Yes.
And they go to AI. So
looking for qualities.
Yes.
Expectations met. Okay. Expectation is to get married. So you go to AI. These functions of AI that are mathematical, analytical, and the things you've said.
Yes.
How does AI help this individual?
Well, I can try to answer that. One of the biggest thing that you'll see if you are actually a conversant person in social media and a lot of reels, you'll always see people saying there are certain ways you can structure your prompts and you'll get certain answers. So in some way, if you're thinking about marriage and you actually have to be in a place where you understand yourself. So there are certain things you can, or certain prompts you can actually ask something like as easy as ChatGPT, and it can be able to tell you. An easy one you can even ask is, what does a healthy relationship look like? And it will be able to recommend a few answers with a caveat that sometimes it can actually be wrong. So depends with what you want to get, but it can be able to enhance some of the knowledge that you already have.
Is it actually wrong, or is it that it is limited in where it sources the information it then gives you?
I wouldn't say, I would say sometimes wrong, but also in certain situations limited to the information that it has been fed. Yes.
Okay. So when we look at, career paths, or when we look at educational courses, Claire, that students would be taking moving into the future, or even presently, how has technology influenced some of those things over time, and what are we seeing is a different direction that folks are taking?
So I'll speak from what we have seen over the last 10 years as Moringa, is that 10 years when Moringa was set up, the primary course that people were coming in and were really excited about was the software engineering pathway. But over the last 10 years, we've seen an increase in interest in courses like UX and UI design. Cybersecurity is really big right now, data analytics. And more, we are actually seeing more interest in our data science course. We also have people who are looking to go into more advanced courses, such as DevOps. And and also like more advanced cybersecurity courses, especially because you find specifically for cybersecurity, institutions do not like hiring people from the outside. They would prefer to actually upskill their software engineers to be cybersecurity specialists because of the very specific nature of some of the issues that they deal with. Yeah.
So what level of education then do you provide to your students so that this particular opportunities that we are talking about, one, it's understood and can be fully taken advantage of?
So we have 3 levels. We have what we call entry level. These courses are geared towards someone who's coming straight out of high school and is looking to just explore. I want to see what opportunities the tech space offers, right? And a lot of those who come to our Foundations of Software Engineering course. They come to our Intro to Data Analytics course, our Intro to Cybersecurity course. Then we have sort of an in-between entry level and intermediate, our software engineering course. You can still go in as straight out of high school, but it is quite technical, as Peter will mention to you. And then you have our data science offering, and you have our sort of intermediate cybersecurity course offering. And then we have then more advanced, which is
how do these courses measure with institutions in the West, in the East, who have students of similar ages and who teach similar subjects? How do they measure?
So one of the big differentiators, especially in the West, so I'll caveat this by saying our curriculum is actually provided by a pretty big boot camp in the US called Flatiron School. We did that because we really wanted to measure up with the global learning standards, especially in tech, because that is where a lot of the tech actually comes from in tech education. So the caveat here is that when you go to institutions and schools in the US, for example, people are learning coding in middle school, right? By the time you're in high school, you have the fundamentals of computer science. You're probably good at Python if you've taken that pathway. But that's not the same as here, right? You're coming straight out of high school. You have barely learned any computer skills, any Python, any coding. You don't have any of that. So the big comparison here is that we have to actually start from scratch, right? And sometimes we have to even teach students how to use a laptop in those initial days. So it can be a little bit of a struggle, but I think there's definitely still a place and a space for us, because our accelerated learning pushes you from being and coming in with minimal to no education in coding to actually being able to do so within a span of, say, 3 to 6 months.
So with the tech space being what it is today and how booming pretty much it's getting in the country, what's the numbers in terms of those who are seeking who are seeking to get acquainted within the tech space? What are the numbers if you're looking at it?
So we'll speak to the numbers that we have,
yes,
right? So what we're seeing in terms of demand, Moringa School started with four students, right, 10 years ago. Now we are skilling about 4,500 students a year. We cannot be able to meet that demand. And we are in a space that has, universities, we have other boot camps that have come into the space, right, and we're not able to meet that demand. So there is a lot of need, right? And a lot of people just come in saying, I don't know where I want to land. I just know that I want to be in tech, right? So there's a pretty big demand there.
We're talking about 4,500 and still counting. I mean, is the country, as you speak, able to absorb all these takers that you have? Or is it a question of, I'll just bolt and go somewhere else? Do we see them like reside here or just bolt and leave?
I think I can take that. One of the greatest thing, and I think a phrase that most of us are acquainted with is nowadays the globe is a village, and what you find that is you're not limited just to Kenya. And I think if I can mention maybe something that was not that positive was when people were writing research papers, it was a lot of Kenyans that were actually doing the writing, and they were not actually writing for people that are here. So in the same way, even when you are able to get away from Moringa, you can be able to work for any companies. We have students that have actually graduated and working for foreign companies, not just maybe in the West or East, even for other African countries. So you're not just limited within the locality of Kenya.
So what are you doing? Because it was clear before when you look at traditional jobs, and still, I mean, sometimes just don't like that label, but okay, that's what they are. When we look at traditional roles, it was clear. You go to 4 years of medicine, then you go through 2 years of it, and then you do another 6 years of God knows what. So you spend a number of 12, 13 years, and then you come out, you are a doctor. It is clear you will practice some form of medicine depending on what your specialization was, right? So with tech, maybe it's not so clear. And so maybe it is clear for us to know what kinds of jobs would you do? If you go in and you study, because we're saying that this is the bankable course, right? This is the go-to course where you are guaranteed of something today. What kind of jobs are we seeing that folks are getting into after having gone through the tech space of study?
You have data analysts, right? You're working, say, in a bank as a data analyst. You could still also work in that same bank as a DevOps engineer, managing that ecosystem. You can go in and be an actual software engineer who's developing code to build a product. You could be a UX researcher, UI designer, building a product, right, for, say, Safaricom. You could be a data scientist, right, working at a hospital. You could be, data analyst. I think I've mentioned that. Are there any others, Peter, that I'm a cybersecurity analyst?
Yes. Now, I think one of the beauties of tech is, like Claire mentioned, in the sense that when you're working in an organization, they will rather actually upskill you rather than hiring from outside. The beauty of tech is there are certain principles that are shared across the different disciplines. So if you learn one, you can be able to teach yourself again. That is also the beauty of tech. That's why we started with opportunities. Yeah.
So as we speak right now, the world is facing a very interesting time where we have all these tariffs and job losses are being thrown all over the place. But still, in the same hindsight, as much as we're talking about job losses, the demand for tech jobs keeps on increasing. So in terms of governments, policymakers just sitting and looking on how to invest in this space, how should we be looking at it?
In my opinion, most of the times I actually say in education. And I think part of that is being taken care of in the sense that now I think one of our initiatives is actually going to high schools and actually teaching people how to actually write code. But now I think in the new curriculum, you can be able to learn how to code while you're still young, which is something that is, I think, sort of a default in the West. So this actually prepares people to be in position to actually understand and actually have the skills that guarantee them certain access to certain opportunities. So how governments can do is just making sure that in the way we think about education, we don't think about it in a rigid way. We actually think of it in a way that, yes, tech changes, but there are certain things that actually stay constant for quite some time. So making sure that you are up to date. You're not learning something that maybe was outdated or deprecated somewhere. So just making sure that education is up to date.
Okay.
Yes.
Recession-proof careers. Why tech is one of the safest bets today. We're talking with Director of Product Clare Korir and Peter Muturi, who is a Senior Technical Advisor, both at Moringa School, and we're having that conversation this hour. So let's look into, when we talk about recession-proof careers, because we're saying, okay, so what happens when, things, get flushed away? Will I then be able to bank on this? And I'm trying to liken it in my head to, what we're told about communications, that it really didn't matter what career you chose or what sector you got into, there would be a communications arm. Somebody needed to pass a message from one place to another, so it was a safe bet. Are we looking at the same thing for tech?
It is a safe bet as long as you continue to upskill, right? yes, this is one of the industries that for sure is changing the trajectory of the way the world is going to move. But for sure, you do need to continue to upskill to make sure that you stay on top of whatever changes are coming into the tech space.
These changes that you speak of, let's start with recession. What happens in a recession?
Economies
downturn.
Go down, yeah.
It's exactly. People are losing jobs.
Yeah.
Now, to lose jobs, you must have them.
True.
So if we are saying that tech then proves you from the harmful effects of recession, and you're saying tech can ride that wave because the recession won't actually affect it.
So what we've seen in the past is that even when there's an economic downturn, innovation does not stop. In fact, you find that in industries, institutions, corporations actually look to innovation to say if it's automating, if it is making the operations more cheap, right? You're looking to tech most of the time to actually make the industry more operationally sound, right? So that is the conversation that we continue to have even with our students about ensuring that you're able to actually ride the wave. And you'll find that especially during recessions, the tech talent is usually the ones that they say, we want to actually retain you because you're able to help us ride the wave and think about how we can make our operations more.
If tech is what it is that we tout it as being, how can you then use it to prevent that recession?
That's a very good question. And I'm actually an economist, but I haven't had time to think about how to use tech to...
Let me give you a thought.
Yes, give me a thought.
There are indicators that you're heading towards a recession. We've had enough of them for us to know what happens and how. Okay? AI that Peter mentioned here has that information and they can provide it. So how then do you prove yourself? How then do you use information that is available? Because the indicators, if you can allay them in adequate time, then what we normally know as a recession will actually not occur. You can avert it. So now, tech. How does tech come in to be able to avert all this?
So I think putting the burden of allaying a recession on tech is actually a really big task. I wish that is the case, that I could actually be able to do that. However, I actually think that tech, more than anything, is an enabler, right? So unfortunately, if your underlying principles, right, your industry, your agriculture, your education, if all that is not actually thought about well, and you have a lot of gaps and you have corruption, tech is not going to be able to fix that, right? But we are an enabler, right, that can make, right, these industries actually thrive, right? You can automate more.
We have corruption as a problem. Actually, the problem is not corruption. Corruption is a manifestation of impunity. And we can see it. Tech has been used to actually combat corruption very, very effectively. But these are the byproducts of political systems, politicians, and the way they go about their business. We're talking about information that can be provided by tech to inform. Once you are informed, then you are able to take the necessary steps.
Seti, what I hear you talk about is pretty much how do we consume information provided by tech for us to be able to put barriers and buffers to be able to be good citizens in the future. Which then brings the question, as a country, as policymakers, as leaders that we have, or even as Kenyans, are we at a point where we understand information communication from tech and consume it for our own benefit?
I'll say yes and no. And it's not just a Kenyan problem.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember, I think during the elections in the US, there was a lot of deepfakes and things like that. So it's not an issue of maybe just a country. What I can say is I actually agree with Seti when he says that it's city. Sorry.
I am aware that people call me what they like, but yes, these two take the charge. They're my initials, C and T. Yes.
All right. Sorry. So city.
Yes.
One of the things is I like to think of tech as a shadow, in the sense that if there is an absence of light, then the shadow disappears. In this regard, like, yes, we can be able to actually predict and say that if we continue in a certain trajectory, maybe we'll actually conclude in a recession. But you see, in as much as tech provides that, we also have policymakers, and policymakers, I think, are the people that make a country run. So in that sense, it's just making sure that, as the way a doctor tells you, do make sure you actually eat well. If you don't, this will happen. And if you choose not to do that, well, the consequences come to you. So I think it's just being in a place where we have the mentality as maybe citizens, in the sense that whatever we provide is for the betterment of our country, and it's okay because sometimes we might be blindsided by not seeing the future, but here we have data, and I think most people have always said data doesn't lie.
Policymakers create a path.
Yes.
There is the option that you have to follow it willingly or not. Banking, by its very nature, and what we refer to as the fiduciary issue, the notes that we see, the reason why they are viable and they have value is because of the concept of trust. If we lose trust, it loses value immediately. The power that politicians have is based on the same principle. We give it to them and we allow them. Most times when you do not take any action, it's because the information you have hasn't quite percolated adequately into your system, or you don't fully understand the ramifications. Now, where AI, I'm sticking to this thing of mine, where AI comes in, AI goes ahead of the curve and is able to do things that ordinarily human beings sitting down in a focus group discussion will not come up with. Now, the willingness to use what AI tells you and the predictions that it can actually provide for you. How do we ensure that these things are consumed or are able to be consumed in a manner that many people can consume it? M-Pesa is consumed and it continues to be consumed. You know why? People see the benefit and they understand. It is the same thing you people are talking about. It's technical solutions. As they say in Kiswahili, kazi kwako.
True, for sure. I think, one of the things that I have been very impressed by one of the hospitals in Nairobi, and this is not something that they, designed themselves. This is something that they actually bought and invested in, is that they have an entire diagnostic setup, right, that actually uses AI when they're bringing in patients into the emergency room. And for sure, that is what he's talking about. The idea and the ability of AI and tech to actually use and make processes simpler and more useful for the people that they serve.
Right.
If I could close my eyes and open them and wish upon a star, I would try as much as possible and ensure that this could be something that could be translated, say, even in education, right, to make it more efficient, right, and bring it more up to speed to where the world is. But that's not where I am. I'm not a magician. However, that is why Moringa exists. We exist to actually be able to move this country from where we are, and as much as possible be the skilling institution for the future and for the transformation of this country.
And those are the boot camps that you talk about.
Yes.
So maybe explain a little bit about those boot camps for us, because you talked earlier about the interdependency between tech and then other industries, that you cannot have, tech come in and be the solution if you didn't start on a proper foundation. So now we say, okay, fine, you didn't get the proper foundation, but we can come in later with boot camps. How does that work?
So boot camps exist in a space where there was a little bit of a gap from university education. Universities can be very traditional, right, and take a very long time to actually change the way that they deliver education. So boot camps came in to actually address the question around skilling, right? That industries need specific skills. So for example, a certain institution comes to us and says, my engineers need this very specific skill in robotics process automation rather, and I want them to actually use the specific projects that we have and the issues and the challenges that we have in the company to actually learn and refine this skill. And the reason why it's called bootcamp is because they are short and they are intense, right? And they are very, very practical. So you're doing labs, you're doing code challenges, you're doing projects very specific to this skills that is needed in industry. So how that looks like for Moringa is that we make sure that we are in constant conversation with employers, with people in industry, to make sure that the skills that we're teaching, the types of stacks that we're teaching are actually things that are needed and necessary in industry, so that can actually be translated into an employment opportunity or gig work, right, for the learners that we and participants that we have.
I mean, tech is also one area where we see women breaking these barriers every other new day. Girls are tapping into it big time. So in terms of tech just bridging that gap, and as well as just seeing more women getting into it, in terms of, again, the numbers that you see in terms of women coming into it, how does it look like?
So we're still not in the ideal situation. The ideal situation would be if we have 50-50 balance, gender balance, but we're not. We still find that there's a lot more men or gentlemen who are coming into the tech space. So we're at about 35 to 65%, 65% male. But we are consistently being deliberate about making sure that we reach out to more women. And I think this year, that is one of our admissions pillars, and making sure that we bring that gender parity into
the admission?
Yes, into our processes.
But when they do get in, they do well?
They do well. They do well. We are very deliberate about supporting our students, right? And as we have an entire team that is focused on supporting students, especially when they struggle, because we find that sometimes, especially when you are in a class that is not very balanced, you don't feel heard, that's where you actually drop off. It's not necessarily the nature of the content. So we have an entire department that is dedicated to student support, ensuring that we are in the students' business. They know we're here to help. This additional support during the week, over the weekends, just to make sure that you are keeping up with the very intensive learning.
So, Peter, I didn't, and this could be anybody, somebody who didn't have or doesn't have the foundation in tech. What did they do? Studied business, study something else, and then they come and say, well, I want to be able to get into a space whereby I can use it in the future. How then do they get started?
That is an interesting question, because I have had students like that. Ones that maybe are completely green, other ones that are actually shifting from, maybe they want to do a career switch. What I'll say is the way the content is structured, anyone and everybody can do it. What usually matters for me, and it's one of the greatest speech I usually tell students before they start, is just make sure that your mentality is actually in a point of, I am willing to learn. It might be challenging, but it's not hard, it's not impossible. So you can be able to do it. You'll come, you'll be guided. And that's the whole point of how it is actually structured. Other bit, I think, is the way the content is structured is it has touch points for you to actually reassure your knowledge. So you will be able to actually be able to go through it and come out well. You just have to, for lack of better English, send yourself.
You do, man.
Yes.
You know, technology is scary. Scary in the sense that it is something that takes a bit of time for someone to understand. And the earlier one interacts with it, well, the easier it is to live with it. most decision makers, unfortunately, are not young.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get decision makers, more so decision influencers, politicians, to actually understand the benefits of tech? They may understand it for their children, but they may not understand it for themselves. I say this because when they understand it and somebody makes a suggestions of tech-related solutions, it becomes easier for them to accept.
Mm-hmm.
If they are not, they don't have to be tech savvy. They just need to be tech literate. If they're adequately tech literate, then the resistance factor with this idea is reduced significantly. So it makes other things that ordinarily would be difficult a lot easier. My question, boot camp for seniors.
That is not
Otherwise
a bad idea.
asked us, how can I actually
Yes.
join a boot camp?
Boot camp. Can you tailor make a boot
Me,
camp
I
for
have-
me?
I have those phones that do everything called?
Smartphone.
I have two
Bus.
smartphones.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Two,
That's
not
your
one.
take. That's your take.
That's a lot of tech.
Or tech.
Or tech.
I think so. The approach that we are taking and I'll speak from what we are doing, is educating parents. So what we find is that a lot of the people who come to us because it's the child who told the parent that I want to do tech, take me to Moringa. But we are trying to switch that a little bit and have more conversations with parents, invite them in to see our student projects. We talk to them about career opportunities and things like that. That's the bootcamp offering that we currently have for the older generation. But I have to say that I think because of just how much tech has percolated every aspect of life, we are seeing a lot more people in the older generation. We are seeing more conversations that are happening with the Council of Governors, digital economy. We're seeing some of these decision makers come to the table more and want to have that understanding to make better decisions. I mean, right now there is an AI strategy that the government just put together, right?
Yes.
And we're yet to see what that effect will be. But I think the conversation around tech is definitely in the right spaces.
Do we have then a retention program? Because, here we are having simultaneous conversations about training and work and business and growth for the African continent. Are we training now people to take that skill and that talent off of the continent? Or are we training and then are there requisite jobs for this training then to remain here? We keep having these conversations about unification and the strength in the African continent, but are we training folks to take that knowledge outside the continent?
To some extent, we do, right? Because tech that makes it is sort of a global currency. You don't have to stay in Nairobi. You don't have to be in Joburg to do some of this work. But I think because of some of the conversations and policies that are happening outside of the African continent, you could even talk about tariffs, the aversion to migrants, right? You see even the bigger global companies are actually setting up shop in the big hubs, right? In Joburg, all the big tech companies, all the big global companies have a footing in these major cities. What I can say from what we see from our employment data is that we cannot be able to actually fill some of the tech roles that are coming up. There's just so many. The issues are just about we need the right skill. We need the right skill. But those jobs are actually there.
So one would ask, there is access to the services that you offer, but I want to talk about the rural communities of this country and how they can access your services. And I've even seen some of our listeners and viewers asking, your courses, must I be physically there, or do you also offer online? And if so, how do people from the rural areas get these services easily?
So we have a class. Let me speak to this. We have a class in software engineering, data science, cybersecurity coming up on May 5th. The offerings are both remote and hybrid, right? So you can be able, as long as you have a good internet connection and you have your laptop, you can be able to actually join from anywhere across the country. And a lot of the people who are in different parts of the country choose to actually join our remote offerings because they don't have to come to Nairobi. We also then have our hybrid courses where 2 times a week you come to our Ngong Lane campus, you interact with other students, with our technical mentors, and you actually have a little bit more of that in-person interaction that I think people really need, right? And sometimes even want. Sometimes parents just say, no, I don't want my child at home. I want them to actually come to campus. So we have both offerings. We have also explored opening satellite campuses in different parts, in different counties. Not as successful because we are just seeing that people, if you want the hybrid offering, people actually prefer to come to Nairobi or just have the remote, join our remote classes.
So when we look at the inability to meet the demand, that's one of the first things that you said, and you combine that with the potential of what can be done in this space. Is it not worth having conversations with policymakers then about what needs to happen in the future when we talk about job placement, when we talk about furthering or widening the education belt? Is it not, if people are coming to Moringa, for example, and other interested parties or players or stakeholders, then to actually have these conversations and say, guys, come on, we have to do something better about this, whether it's at the education level, at the practice level, it's countrywide. It's not just our little side home here where folks come in and they get educated and then they leave. It's nationwide effect. Isn't it about time those conversations took place?
Peter, do you want to take this one?
Yes, and I think I'll try to answer also a question that City asked previously about adopting tech. There is usually a journey in products where you'll have early adopters, and then after that you'll have other people coming to adopt it. Even the way he shared about M-Pesa. Before M-Pesa became M-Pesa, there were people that were a bit skeptical about it.
I was one of them.
Well, then this point will go home. I think even when you think about AI and other things, as of now where we are, it is not something that is widely accepted yet, but we have people that have adopted it fast. And then after that, we'll have people that maybe becomes a default now. Do you have M-Pesa? Where can I pay via till? Something like that. Now, to the other question, I think, yes. One of the biggest challenges, I think, even here in Kenya was when I think Microsoft came. And you see, Microsoft is a huge company, and probably the compensation they offer compared to other startup or tech startups will actually be a bit different, right? So in a way that we can do, I'm not sure if we are here as a democracy, but we can be able to have policies that allow maybe for certain wages. This can actually maybe encourage certain people to actually stay, so that you don't necessarily need to see maybe the dollar looks more attractive than actually getting paid in shillings. Yes.
Tell us about May 5th. It's a big day. Intake. What should anyone who wants to join Moringa look at?
So you can come to our Ngong Lane campus and sign up for courses there. Go to moringaschool.com and sign up for any of the courses. The 3 big courses that we are looking to actually fill is software engineering. We have both part-time and full-time, and for that we also have the remote and hybrid. For our data science course as well, we have remote, hybrid, and part-time and full-time. They are between 3 to 6 months, so depending on how much time you have and whether or not you're working, you can select which ones you'd like to join. And then we also have our cybersecurity boot camp as well.
And so how are folks getting in touch with you?
So go to our website www.moringaschool.com.
Say it again, please.
Moringa School, www.moringaschool.com. moringa.com.
And then also, I just thought about something interesting, is that in Kenya, folks who've come out of Moringa school, where have you seen them placed, interestingly enough?
Safaricom,
Okay.
number one. We've had a few, I think, in Twiga. I think there was one guy, I don't remember, he was a student of mine. Last I checked, he was in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's across. So you can have people either working in Nairobi. There's, I think, another student of mine also, who I think, worked for an NGO in Somalia. So it's across.
It's across.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. And I mean, I'm just glad that we're able to have these conversations where we look at, something that you can actually bank on and look for solutions in terms of what folks are studying today and the place that it will get them to into the future, And just as we wrap that up, what would be your encouragement for folks who are thinking about and say, okay, should I not?
I think if you want to have control over your future and you want to open yourself to many, many possibilities, definitely go into tech.
And for you, Peter?
Take a chance. Take a chance. Don't worry about a lot. Anything and everything is possible. Yes.
And that's the way to go. Clare Korir is the director of project, and Peter Muturi is the senior technical mentor at the Moringa School today. We'll be looking at recession-proof careers and why tech is one of the safest bets today, whether it's through education or whether it's through the job that you do. Want to thank you very much for those refreshing moments to have that conversation today.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.